welcome back to the Moose Shop. I've had this idea for quite a while now, so I think I'm going to go after it. And what it is a coffee table completely made out of coffee. Not just the top with some epoxy and some coffee beans sprinkled on it. No, the legs and all the framework are going to be made out of coffee grinds and epoxy, and the table top will be made out of 3 different types of beans. So I've done a SketchUp. I've done my homework with all the volume and how much I need. So I got most of my supplies. I got more epoxy coming. I have used coffee grinds coming from a coffee shop here in town called Local. So if you're in the neighborhood, you should stop by there. It's a great place. I got my sandpapers. I got my coffee beans from roasted to raw. Yeah, so I think I got everything I need. The only funny part about all this is that I have no experience in epoxy. The only epoxy experience I have is this 5-minute stuff. So this is going to be an adventure. "17 years old last week." Okay, so the forms are all done. The legs and the aprons and the skirts. And I'm going to do the tabletop form later. But right now we need to go get some coffee grinds down at the local coffee shop, which is called the Local. I left them a 5-gallon bucket. And they're going to fill it up with used coffee grinds for me. And I'll come home and I'll dry them out, clean them up, and get them all prepared. Okay, so let's see what we got. What I'm going to plan on doing is use this cheesecloth, dump some in there, strain it out, get all the moisture out as possible, and then put it on a cookie sheet and throw it in the oven for about a half hour to 45 minutes at real low temperature so that there's no moisture left in it whatsoever. And I'm going to sift all this into a fine grain, and what that's going to do is going to get all the remaining moisture that might be caught up in these clumps, and we're going to get the filter paper that's remained out of there. And then we'll put it back in the oven for, I don't know, another 30 minutes or so until it's completely dry. The moisture is, I think, our enemy here with the epoxy. They're all dried up and cooled down. Look at that, nice. Legs all ready to go, caulked all the corners, and now we're going to spray some mold release in there, and let's pour these first. All right, so I'm mixing up my 4th leg and my 4th cup of coffee. This place smells like a coffee house. All right, so now that we got the legs all poured, let's pour the aprons and the skirts. So I poured the epoxy and I left the shop for a couple hours, and check out what I came back to. Freaking disaster. Look at this. The aprons and the skirts are absolutely fine, and the legs exploded on me. I'm not positive on what happened, but I got a feeling I poured too much epoxy at one time and it overheated and just blew up. What a mess. Back to the old drawing board. Okay, so after talking to the epoxy guy, we decided to pour it again. I couldn't save those other casts, so I had to make new ones. So I'm going to pour these in half at a time. And he also mentioned if I could get the shop as cool as possible. So I'm pouring it on a cool day with the window open and made a little fan going. So it's about 60 degrees. So we'll see what happens. We'll go halfway and then we'll let that cure for a day and then we'll do the second half. Okay, so we survived the first pour. I waited 2 days and watching it throughout the days because this is a very slow hardening epoxy because it's you're able to pour thick. Well, supposedly you are. And so throughout the night and throughout the next day, it never got any warmer than 80 degrees and the garage was at 60. So I'm moving on and pouring the second half. I think we got it. Okay, so for the tabletop, I'm pouring a tabletop epoxy from Total Boat, which is a total different animal than the first epoxy I poured. Here I'm going to have to raise the temperature in the shop to above 70, 74 degrees, and I'm going to have to pour this at 1/8 of an inch at a time, which means I'm going to have to pour this at least a minimum of 7 times because I'm going to add beans on the third pour, I think. And that might get me up to an inch, is what I want to get to. So, that being said, let's hope that this all works out fine. So, I'm going to pour 1/8 of an inch, let it sit between 5 and 7 hours, pour another one, then continue on. Okay, so I just finished pouring the third pour, and it's still wet, and I'm going to add the beans now. We'll start off with some raw green beans in the middle. We'll spread those out, and then around that I'm going to do like a half roast, and then on the perimeter it'll be a full roast. So it'll be a nice dark roast on the outside. So let's get a layer of this, and then we'll let that set up, and then we'll pour another layer on top. Okay, so we let that dry for 5 to 7 hours, and now we're going to pour right on top of these beans. Cover them up real nice. And I believe after that we might have 3 more times. I'm kind of losing track here. That was 3, this is 4, we have 5, 6, 7. 3 more after this. Alright, so this is the last pour, number 7, and we're going to stay with that. Give me up almost to an inch. Okay, so as we let the top dry for a few days, we got a lot of work ahead of us with the rest of the table. So let's take these out of the mold. We'll get them all sanded down and get ready for some mortise and tenon and put them together and get the framework done. Alright, so I taped up all the tenons and the mortises, and because what I'm going to do is I'm going to polish this. I'm going to put a rubbing compound on there, and then a polish, and I don't want to get any of that on the glue surfaces. So I was going to go with this tabletop epoxy for the finish, but it's just too shiny, plastic, and you can't see. It's just a black piece of material. So what I'm going to do is if I polish it, it gives a matte finish, and you can actually see the grain of the coffees in there. So that's the purpose of it, right? To be able to see what I made it out of. So I'm going to go with this finish. It cleans it up really nice. I think it's kind of cool looking. Alright, so we got everything polished up and looking good. Now it's time to glue up. And I'm thinking that using an adhesive epoxy to glue epoxy seems like the thing to do. So that's what I'm going for. So we're going to put a little bit inside the mortises and a little bit on the tenons, and then we'll clamp this up for the night. So when I did a dry fit, it seemed like it went together pretty good. So I went with it. I put the glue on, but I made these jigs that had a little notch in the corners so they could fit in each corner to make sure that I'm keeping it square. And then I used a regular square for the uprights, the legs, and made sure that they were nice. And then for the space between them, I did the same distance from the top to the bottom to make sure that they were staying straight too. And then I let it sit overnight, and I unclamped it the next day, flipped it over, and it sat really nice. I was super happy about it. And I really like the looks of it. I like the chamfering on the legs, and I like the matte finish that I did with the polish. So now it's time to move on to the tabletop, and I'm going to take it out of the mold and see what we got. Okay, so the top turned out really nice. What I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to sand the edges. Along the perimeter of it, it seems like when you pour this epoxy, it seeps up on the sides and it becomes really sharp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand sand them to, like, I'm going to round them over. And I was thinking about doing a chamfer on it, but I'm too scared to take any tool to this, and I'm afraid it's going to chip. So I'm just going to do it by hand, make them nice and soft, and then I'll sand the sides also, and then we're going to totally sand the bottom just to make it a little bit clearer. But the top itself is crystal clear. Well, we pulled it off. It all came together at the end. So it was fun. It was a little scary at one point, but we recovered, got it done. It really turned out really cool, I think. I'm not too sure if this is going to go to the local coffee shop for a while to put it on display. I'll let you know. Follow me on Instagram, and I'll keep you updated if it does do that, if anybody wants to go by and see it. I want to thank them, local coffee shop here in town, and also Total Boat for their support for all the questions I had to help me through this journey. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, please hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you soon.